This is something I'm going to call Confessions of a Mediocre Artist, which I guess is me, the mediocre artist. Um, let's look at my generation, the baby boomers. As I'm smack dab in the middle of the baby boomer generation, and my father fought in World War II, and he came home, and all of our fathers, and they built the new America after World War II. It was a golden age we grew up in. We had everything in the suburbs and sidewalks, playing in the street, and good schools, and everything. The sky was the limit. There was a very optimistic way that we looked at the world, and a lot of us became artists. And a lot of there's a movement of art that occurred with these people who were living in the golden age. And we saw a lot of it. There was the televisions that was new, and we saw all the 60s television shows, and the Beatles and the Stones, and there was a Peter Max and Andy Warhol and all these artists that came out of that golden age. And many of us, not all of us, but millions of tens of millions of people across the United States, and maybe in England and so forth in Europe, decided that this was such a golden age that we would become artists. And around the entire United States nowadays are many people who were artists. And there's a big difference between saying, I'm going to be an artist, and there's, I am an artist. And many of us have dedicated our lives toward producing art. We have not made a living at it. So that would be the mediocre artists of the world, I suppose. And that's a horrible thing. People say, don't say that. But, you got to ask yourself, after you've been at it for many, many years, what is the purpose behind producing art year in and year out, although very little of it is seen by very many people, and you're not really making much money at it. And it's how good are you really at it? And if you aren't really that good, there's other people who are possibly better at it than you, then why do you continue doing it? Well, why do the teams that lose games keep playing football? But they just do, because that's what they like to do, and that's what they are. They're football players. So the same thing with artists. And how do you judge somebody that's really a talented artist anyway? I suppose in our society, money is the measure of all things. It's the only God that exists in our society. And back in the Middle Ages, artists produced art that honored God. And nowadays, what is the thing that we adore in this society? It's money. So the measure of a successful artist is how much money that they make doing their art. And if that's the case, then, there really aren't that many percentage-wise successful artists that make art. And then we have to judge quality of art based upon financial ability, so many people think. But I don't know. If that were the case always, then Van Gogh would have been a complete failure of his artist, because he never made any money, but he's considered the greatest artist practically in the history of the world. So what else is there besides money that can judge a person's artistic ability? Well, you can have an objective opinion about the craft of the art. So, for example, there's some art, at least with me, that's easier to judge as far as the general quality of the art. Like, for example, out of all the things that I've done artistically, the only thing I really made any money at was music. And that wasn't much either. But you can judge musicianship, I think, at least the craft of being a musician, a lot easier than some of the other arts. For example, um, if I sat down in the room with Eric Clapton and me, I had a guitar, and maybe Segovia, the classical guitar player who's now dead, by the way. We all sat down in a room, and we all decided to play a little bit of the guitar, and I sat down, and I used to be pretty good, and I'm still play the guitar, and I'm not bad. If people don't know how to play the guitar and they heard me play, they'd say, hey, you're pretty good. But if I sat down in a room with those other guys and Eric Clapton played after I played, I mean, how often do you really get to sit close to somebody that is that good, a virtuoso? Your mouth would drop open because his skill and his craft is so refined and beautiful. And then the Segovia, then he'd play in front of you, and it would be incredible to sit down in that situation with those people and see how good they really are. So I think in musicianship, it's easy to judge how good the craft is there. No, that's not necessarily art. It is art, but it's a certain type of art in music. Another type of art in music is how creative you are in creating new music and breaking barriers and making something beautiful from your creative spirit. Writing good music, for example. That's different than being able to play the music well. But music, I believe, in general, is easier to judge for me. And then the next thing I think would be like the visual arts, like painting and sculpture. I saw a video one time of Pablo Picasso, and they showed him drawing the silhouette of a woman with one stroke like this. And the confidence of that stroke and just the magnificence of the line that he drew is amazing to me, to see a master at work like that. That was a man who had a craft. Now, and of course, Pablo Picasso's paintings, a lot of people can't stand them, but people who watch a lot of art have to admit that he's brilliant. It's beautiful stuff. And then there's me, and I make pictures. I take forever to draw a line. But does that make me less of an artist than Pablo Picasso? I'm trying to create something new and different, and I feel that I'm creative, and although I've never met a nickel doing it. And then the next one I want to point out is writing. And I admit to people that I've written about 5 novels and 2 screenplays and 3 plays and about 30 short stories and how many school papers. And the only money I've ever really made on it is writing other people's school papers, which I shouldn't admit, right? But, how good of a writer am I? I've written all that, and I haven't hardly made any money at it. I've had some rejection slips, but that's an interesting question, because I think that's even harder to tell than almost any other of the arts I just described. There's lots of writers out there who write and don't get any money for what they're doing, and they could be brilliant writers. They'll give you an example. The guy who wrote that Kennedy O'Toole guy who wrote Confederacy of Dunces. He sent his book into all these different publishers, and they all rejected it and rejected it and rejected it. Finally, he got all discouraged and he hung himself. He killed himself. And then one of his friends sent it to a publisher, and they said, "Oh, this is good," and they published it. It was a bestseller. It's a brilliant book. And the other one was the Joyce Carol Oates. She was a established writer, sold millions of copies of books, considered one of the top writers in the world. And she wrote this one book which she felt was a little bit in a different genre than she normally wrote. And she decided to send it to her publisher under an assumed, a pen name, and it was rejected. And she sent it out to all these publishers, Rejected, not what we're looking for. Is don't quit your day job. That's what a lot of people might say. But she was a famous author that her fans waited for her to come out with her next book every time, and they were ready to buy it regularly. But if she submitted it under another name, they could not tell the quality of her work, although she thought it was really good when she sent it. So it's like writing, I think, is a little more of an obscure thing to judge a little bit than, there's got to be other ways to get in. You have to have like connections to even get started, I think. Well, what I want to say is I know there's a lot of you out there who are artists, who in my generation and later, and let me just say people who are later after me, and you write let's say you want to be a writer, you are a writer. There's a difference, I say, between you want to be one and you are one. You're a writer, you write books, and you're still developing your craft, and somebody reads it and they say, don't quit your day job. It's other people who are in your life, they say, why do you want to do the artsy fartsy thing? Well, why don't you get a real job or something like that? You're wasting your time. Well, I point out something. I lived in New York City for a little while, in Manhattan and Queens, and for the number of people who live in New York City, there are relatively few bands that come out of that city. There are some. There's like Blondie and I think the Ramones and all that, but if you look at a place like Macon, Georgia, or Canton, Ohio, there's many more bands that actually come out of those places than out of New York City. And there's a reason for that. It's because you have to stink for a little while you develop your craft. You go to New York City and they're really judgmental immediately. They'll say, oh, that's not music you're playing. You got to be in the garage for a while and kind of like stink for a little while and work at your craft. And, there's two kinds of things going on here. There's the development of your craft and the inspiration and the passion that comes from you in order to do your art. Those are two different things. You cannot go to a commercial establishment, a commercial world, and not have your craft developed. But the craft doesn't come immediately. What you need really is inspiration. You need some sort of a passion for being an artist in order to be a good artist. If you're just looking for money and that's the only judgment that you make, then you're failing. So I say this to all you people who are judged as mediocre artists. What is the value of making your art? Some of it is the value it is to you. Some of it is a necessity to make art. Whether or not other people like it or not, you feel a necessity to make art. There's something inspiring you from, who knows if it's within you or beyond you, but that's why you make your art, not just to be judged by other people or paid by other people. So thank you.